FPL Game Week 3 Transfer Plans. Every single game week of FPL we think looks simple, and every week there is more chaos that is thrown our way. Today I'm going to have a look at my first lineup for Game Week 3, discuss some potential transfers, who I'm looking to buy and who I'm looking to sell. Cough, cough, Christopher Nkunku, you are definitely leaving my team this week. So we'll go through all of that. A first look at the lineup and some potential transfers for this week and the next few weeks as well. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here as well. And today we are having a look at some Game Week 3 first transfer plans. Apologies, this video is a little bit late, and apologies if my voice sounds a little bit croaky this morning. I've been at a wedding for some very close friends over the weekend, and I've just got back and I'm sitting down to record this video. Game Week 2 went pretty well for me. Got a small green arrow from 700k to 600k, 606k I am now. Was pretty happy with that. There were a couple of good returns in there, like we had a goal for Smith Rowe. Of course, the Haaland captaincy. I didn't play the triple captain, and anyone who watched the deadline stream knew I was just nowhere near it. It wasn't really on radar for me. I know he got this hat trick, and on paper it looks like a great decision now. And if you went for it, congratulations on your 17-point triple captain. I still scored 80 points this week, even without triple captain, which I think is pretty good. All of my defenders returned, and yeah, Smith Rowe in there, Jota with an assist, Saka with points as well. It was Christopher Nkunku and Chris Wood, the sort of main disappointments for me. Chris Wood, I'm happy to give one more week because he's got Wolves at home. We saw how many goals they've just conceded to Chelsea, and then Nkunku didn't even start, and Chelsea went and scored 6 goals. So what that could have been. But yeah, on the triple captain, I'm happy I have got it later down the line. But of course, if I knew he was going to score a hat-trick, I absolutely would have played it, and there's no doubt about that. Looking at my team and potential transfers that I'm looking to make going into Game Week 3, the first thing I'm being asked a lot about is Dean Henderson in goal, and we'll talk about a few goalkeepers that I do have my eye on. Absolutely not impressed with Crystal Palace defensively. I think going forward, although they're not scoring goals, I still quite like them, and we'll talk about Eze in a moment. Henderson, I'm not that fussed on, and I do think they look weak defensively. If Mark Guehi was to go to Newcastle this week, which is looking less and less likely, that would be a massive, massive red flag and might even force me to sell him this week. Again, I don't love making goalkeeper transfers early on in the season, but watching those Crystal Palace goals get conceded every single week, I'm just certain that they are going to concede goals in pretty much every single game at the moment. Yeah, that's definitely one that I'm looking at. Defense, on the other hand, I am absolutely happy with it. I don't think I plan on making a defensive transfer for the next 4 or 5 weeks at a minimum. Even if a player was to get injured, I'm pretty happy with the depth I've got. Johnson now, he picked up an assist in Game Week 2 and has a fantastic run of fixtures, and he's just sat last on my bench. This week we plan on benching Pedro Porro in favour of Robinson, Trent and Gabriel. All of these returned in Game Week 3. I benched Gabriel, but Robinson got an assist, Trent got a clean sheet, and Porro got a clean sheet as well. I am wondering a little bit if Trent is worth the 7 million. We haven't had attacking returns yet. He does need to start adding them to his game if he's going to be worth 7 million. If not, you could cover him with a Van Dijk, an Alisson, or a Konate, or a Kwanzaa if he is the one to come back in. So at the moment, Trent is fine. I'm very happy with my defense. The only potential change I look at in defense is just if Trent is worth the money. But at the moment, I'm very happy with the 5 defenders I've picked. Into midfield, Saka I'm happy with, but I do look at the likes of Salah and now Palmer and wonder about them. But I'm pretty happy with Saka. Like, he's definitely not a priority sell. He's maybe a monitor at the moment because I see some others who might be a little bit more explosive. Jota I'm still really happy with. He's focal to Liverpool's attack at the moment. Yeah, he only plays 70, 75 minutes, but he can still do the damage in that time. And he's not massively been outscored by Salah that much for the price difference that they are. Smith Rowe, really happy. The fixtures look great. Morgan Rogers as well, we'll talk about. The fixtures are great, and his performance against Arsenal in Game Week 2, despite no returns, very, very impressed with him. Christopher Nkunku, of course, absolutely not impressed. Of course, he played on Thursday. I did say that if he started on Thursday, I would consider transferring out. And then he only played 60 minutes, and I thought that might be enough for him to start. And of course, it wasn't. So my worries were there, but I didn't act on it. And to be honest, the only player I would have made the transfer for was Eze, and he only scored 2 as well. But I might make that transfer still anyway. But we'll talk about potential Nkunku replacements a lot in this video. Haaland up front, who's currently got the County armband. Isak against Spurs. Now, Isak is another one. Only an assist for him so far this season. Not that impressed with Newcastle as a whole as well. We'll absolutely be keeping an eye on him. I'll probably keep him for this week, but someone like a Havertz, someone like a Dominic Solanke are definitely on radar. Now, Ollie Watkins is the other one. The only issue with Watkins is he's 9 million and he hasn't looked that great. He hasn't really been sort of looking fully fresh and sort of scoring goals and that sort of stuff. He missed a couple of very big chances against Arsenal. And another day if they go in, but he doesn't feel fully up to speed at the moment. So I'll probably hold on to Isak for another week or two, but I am watching him very closely. And then Chris Wood, they are linked with Nketiah, but those links are dying off a little bit, and they've got Wolves at home this week. Yes, he didn't, do that well in game week 2. He scored in game week 1. I do plan on holding him, and if they don't sign Nketiah before the end of the transfer window, he might end up being a longer term hold, because it does feel like Wood is first choice to start, and they use Taiwo Awoniyi, who is an injury risk if they play him too many minutes, is the impact sub. So I don't mind that. They have some nice fixtures coming up. Next week they play Liverpool and I can bench him. So I'm still pretty happy with how my team is lining up. Nkunku is probably the only one that I look at who's a major issue for me. Henderson is also a concern. And then there are some other players that I like the look of. Of course, Cole Palmer, Madueke did well, and a few of the other forwards that I'm looking at. But Nkunku feels like the big one, and I'm sure him and Henderson are probably the reason you're watching this video. So let's have a look at some potential changes for me this week. So just to start off by having a look in goal, there are 3 goalkeepers I'm really looking at, one at each of the price points, 4.5, 5 and 5.5. If I had the money, David Raya would of course be the obvious move. And when I talk about Nkunku replacements, there's part of me who wants to free up the extra money I need to go and buy David Raya. Now, I'm not certain that this is the right time for me to buy David Raya. I know I said that before Aston Villa and then he kept a clean sheet there, but still, Brighton are scoring a lot of goals at the moment. Then it's Spurs away, then it's City away. Game week 5 onwards, the fixtures look fantastic, and I will almost certainly have a plan to get a second Arsenal defender in there. Very happy that I've started with at least one in Gabriel. I almost didn't do that. But I love Raya, but I'm not certain that game week 3 is the time for me to buy it. Elsewhere, there's Sels, and I know going into game week 1, I spoke so much about Sels, and they've been linked with so many goalkeepers, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Again, if we get to the end of the transfer window and they haven't signed a goalkeeper, then Sels is absolutely on radar. Of course, a clean sheet in game week 2. He's been pretty decent. It doesn't massively look like Carlos Miguel is going to come in anytime soon. So I do think Sels is a pretty nice option. And looking at the next fixtures outside of that Liverpool game, there is a pretty nice run of fixtures in there. So I do like him. Forest defensively are solid, but they do have a knack of conceding late goals, as we saw in game week 1. They almost did it in game week 2 against Southampton as well, but they didn't. But the 5 million one is the one that I look at. I don't have a route in my defence really to go and buy an Aston Villa defender. So I do look at Martinez as a potential way into that Aston Villa defence. Now, no clean sheets for them so far this season, and their underlying data has not been fantastic from a defensive point of view. But they have played West Ham, who did get a penalty, and then they've played Arsenal. So that data isn't massively reflective on them as a defensive team. Of course, it's all about the fixtures for Aston Villa. We know the first 2 were tough, but from here on out, the fixtures do look really nice. So Martinez feels like a better set and forget options. There are some cheap Aston Villa defenders, but when Champions League comes around, who's going to play at right back? Could Konza play some? Could the young 4 million defender play some? Who's going to play at centre back every week? It probably is going to be Pau Torres. You've got Luca Dean, you've got Maatsen at left back. There is rotation potentially in that defence, but of course you know what you're going to get with Martinez every week. I'm not sure I'm going to be forcing a goalkeeper transfer just yet, but all 3 of these are on radar. I don't think I'd buy Raya this week just based off the next 3 fixtures. Maybe similar to Sels, just because looking at the next 2, Sels has Wolves at home, Liverpool away, whereas Henderson does have Leicester at home in game week 4. So I don't feel like that's any better over the next 2 games to Henderson. So if I was going to make a goalkeeper transfer, it probably would be to Martinez, looking at the fixtures they've got, but I'm not sure it's worth it when I might need the 0.5 elsewhere. So up front, I spoke about both Isak and Chris Wood as potential transfers out over the next few weeks. I've mentioned Watkins. I need to see him being up to speed a little bit more before I go and spend 9 million on him. I also don't really have a route to him. I could go Isak to Watkins this week. That is something I've considered, but I'm not sure it's a transfer I'm going to force given how Newcastle do like to score goals against Spurs. Chris Wood as well, I plan on keeping this week, but I do have a few forwards that I'm looking at over the next few game weeks. So Watkins, I want to see a little bit more from. The other one is Dominic Solanke, who's not on this list, and of course he's injured at the moment. From game week 5 onwards, though, the fixtures look really nice, and he will absolutely be back on radar because Spurs are scoring goals, and if he'd have played against Everton in game week 2, I'm almost certain he would have got something in that game. Outside of them, I've gone João Pedro over Welbeck just because João Pedro is on penalties and he's playing 90 minutes pretty much every game. He played 90 again against Manchester United in game week 2. Of course, he goes away to Arsenal this week, but I don't actually need a forward this week. Like, I've got a benching dilemma this week anyway. From game week 4 onwards, they have Ipswich and Nottingham Forest. The data's pretty good. He's on penalties as well. So I probably would still buy João Pedro over going Welbeck just because of the penalties and the minutes that we're expecting slightly more based on the start of the season. Next up is Visa. So I don't have Mbermo on my list. Of course, I'm priced out of going Nkunku to Mbermo now, just based on that 0.5 and the price drop for Nkunku. But I do like Visa. If Tony is to leave between now and the end of the transfer window, Southampton at home this week is really nice. Then there's a couple of difficult games though. So he might be another wait and see for a few games further down the line. And then we've got Kai Havertz as well. Again, I'm massively fond of Kai Havertz as an FPL pick. He's already risen in price once. Brighton this week, then Spurs, then City. But then after that, they look great. And even Spurs and City, if I had to play him, fine. But I could also bench him potentially against City. And he can score goals. And Arsenal are going to score goals against everyone. So because of the fixtures I've got with my forward line in Haaland, Isak, and Chris Wood, I probably plan on holding. But João Pedro in particular from next week could easily be a Chris Wood replacement. And then two midfielders, probably the most important part of this video is trying to find an Nkunku replacement. So I have 6.9 million to spend on a midfielder at the moment. So just to clarify, I technically can't afford Eze at the moment, but Eze is predicted to fall in price tonight on Monday, if not probably Tuesday, because he's blanked twice. And I do still quite like him. It would also help with my benching decision because I'd buy him, probably bench him against Chelsea, and then he can come in for Leicester at home, Man United at home, Everton away in the next three after that. Like, they have some really nice fixtures. He has been really unlucky not to get returns. 0.54 XGI per 90 is a really solid sort of start to the season for him. Of course, no returns. And it is just that sort of, is he worth 7 million when you do have some slightly cheaper assets who are returning points? But I absolutely think Eze is still on radar. Once he drops in price as well, I don't expect him to drop 2 or 3 times. So once he goes down to 6.9, I can afford him again, and I do like the fixtures coming up after that Chelsea game, but Chelsea are still leaking chances. He probably would be on my bench though if I bought him this week. Next up is the obvious move that I know a lot of you have done, which is just switch Chelsea players and go to Madueke of Chelsea. The fixtures are so good, and if I do sell Nkunku and not having any part of that Chelsea attack for the next 5 fixtures does feel like a massive concern for me. However, I've already been bitten once by buying the wrong Chelsea attacker and the minutes not being there. After a hat-trick, it's very difficult to see Madueke getting benched, and I absolutely don't think that's going to be the case. But is it possible that one of the next 5, maybe he misses out potentially? Are Chelsea going to score 6 goals over the next 5 games? Probably not. He is a fantastic option, and I did tweet about him going into the start of the season that if we knew he was nailed, I think he's an equally as good asset as Nkunku, but we didn't know that. And he didn't start game week 1, to be fair, so I was kind of right, but not, because he's come in with a hat-trick in game week 2. So I do really like Madueke. I just need, as a Chelsea fan, to consider a little bit exactly how nailed I think he is. When you do have potential that Palmer plays out on the right, you've got Felix, you've got Jackson, you've got Neto, you do have Nkunku who is going to play some minutes. So there is a slight risk there, but I do think he looks, and you can't drop a player who's just scored a hat-trick, right? And Palace at home, Bournemouth away, West Ham away does look pretty nice. He's still only 6.5 million, so he did drop in price last week, and then he rose again, so he's actually still the same price. So it's not that much of an investment if I do decide to go there. Absolutely one that I could look at. And then the other one is Brighton. So I spoke about João Pedro as a potential forward. I look at Mitoma and also Minte as well. Minte is quite an interesting one because it would free up money to go and potentially upgrade and get a Ollie Watkins. It would allow me to go and get a David Raya, a Martinez. It would allow a few other upgrades if I went for a cheaper midfielder. Now, I don't think Minte is as good an option as Mitoma, Madueke, or Eze, but it is that what it allows me to do with the rest of my team. Again, Mitoma could easily be benched this week away at Arsenal, and then he'd play in the couple of fixtures after that. Right now, at the moment, if I had to say who I think I would buy, I know it's going to sound crazy, but Eze is still my number one. He's 90-minute man. He's on penalties and he's on set pieces. Buy him this week once he drops in price, bench him against Chelsea, and then have Leicester at home, United at home, Everton away is still probably my favoured route. Again, I can wait now until later on in the week. We can see the Chelsea fixture later this week. There's a few other Premier League teams playing in cup qualifiers as well. So I'm not forced to rush my transfer, and things could easily change, and I'm not forced to make it at the moment, which is quite nice despite losing 0.1 on him last night. But Nkunku is almost certainly going to leave my team because he'd likely drop in price again this week. And currently Eze, once he goes to 6.9, is my favourite replacement. So, just wrapping up, as I realise this is a slightly longer transfer plans video as we usually have. Pretty happy with my team. There are a couple of positions. Up front is a transfer I expect to make at some point over the next couple of weeks. In goal, Henderson as well. Do I want to force it? If I'm going to sell him, it's probably to Martinez of Aston Villa, given how good their fixtures do look from this week onwards. And then the only other thing is Christopher Nkunku. His replacement this week, is it going to be a Minte at 5.5 or a Mitoma? Am I going to go to Madueke and just go like for like of Chelsea and hope I get the minutes? or is it going to be Eze? As I said at the moment, the current plan would be to go Eze once he drops in price, leave him on my bench for this week and have him for home fixture against Leicester, but I could easily just go Madueke. I think it's probably 60% I go Eze, 35% I go Madueke, and then 5% that I go with someone else. That's currently where I'm sitting, and I'm almost certain that he will leave before the deadline. Captain on Haaland again this week. It could end up on Saka, but I'm pretty certain after Haaland's hat-trick, he will just get the captaincy armband for me again this week. Let me know what you did. If you had Nkunku, have you sold him, and who did you buy? I'm not 100% certain on what I want to do, so I am interested to know who you're buying. Did you just go to Madueke because of his hat-trick, because of the upcoming fixtures, or did you go with someone else? Rodgers or Smith Rowe are the obvious ones as well, but the issue is I already own both of them, so I can't make that transfer. So let me know what you did with him. If you've made other transfers already, let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. There will be more videos this week. Make sure to subscribe for a reminder when they do go live, and I'll be back again very soon.